You think a badge makes you a god? You think you can look at a man, judge his skin, and decide his fate? Officer Derek Harlan thought so. He looked at a beat-up truck and a black man in a cheap motel and saw an easy target. He did not see the classified history. He did not see the medals locked away in a safe in Virginia. When Harlan tightened those handcuffs, he thought he had won. But when the suspect looked him dead in the eye and whispered, "Call my SEAL team," he was not asking for a rescue. He was giving a warning. And when the sky turned black with rotors, Officer Harlan realized, too late, he had just arrested the wrong legend. The rain in Jericho County did not wash things clean. It just made the crime slicker. It was late at night when a rusted Ford F-150 pulled into the gravel lot of the Starlight Motel. The neon sign buzzed with a dying flicker. The M burned out, leaving it to read Starlight Hotel. The man behind the wheel killed the engine. He sat there for a moment, listening to the engine tick as it cooled, the rain drumming a chaotic rhythm on the roof. Kade Voss took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of wet pine and old upholstery. He stood 6'4", with shoulders that spanned the width of the driver's seat and hands that looked like they could crush granite. But his eyes were tired. He was not here for trouble. He was here for a funeral. His old petty officer, a kid named Corey from the teams, had overdosed in this forgotten town. Kade had driven far to ensure Corey's mother had the money for a proper burial and to pay his respects. He wore a simple grey hoodie, faded jeans, and work boots. To the casual observer, he looked like a drifter or a laborer between paychecks. That was exactly what Officer Derek Harlan saw. Harlan was sitting in his patrol cruiser across the street, tucked into the shadows of a closed gas station. He was well into the force, with a reputation that teetered between proactive and problematic. He was the kind of cop who polished his badge until it blinded you, but forgot the oath that came with it. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha," Harlan said into his radio, his eyes narrowing as he watched Kade step out of the truck. "I have a suspicious vehicle at the Starlight. Out-of-state plates. Subject is a large black male. Looks agitated." "Unit 4 Alpha. Any specific probable cause?" the dispatcher asked, her voice bored. "Vehicle matches the description of a truck involved in suspicious drug activity reported recently." Harlan lied smoothly. He did not have a report. He had a quota, and he had a bias that he wore like a second skin. "I am going to initiate a consensual contact." Harlan did not wait for a response. He threw the cruiser into drive, the tires crunching over the wet asphalt as he rolled across the street. He did not turn on his lights. He wanted the element of surprise. Inside room 104, Kade had just set his duffel bag on the stained carpet. The room smelled of mildew and lemon polish. He pulled out his wallet, looking at the picture of his squad. Corey was smiling in the back row. Kade rubbed his thumb over the photo, a wave of grief hitting him like a storm surge. He unclipped his concealed carry holster. He had a permit valid in all 50 states due to his status, though he rarely flaunted it, and placed his Sig Sauer P226 on the nightstand next to his badge, which was buried deep inside a leather wallet that he had not opened in months. He just wanted to sleep. Bang, bang, bang. The knock rattled the hollow wood of the door. Kade froze. He was not expecting anyone. He checked the peephole. A distorted fisheye view showed a uniform, a buzz cut, a jaw set in arrogance. Kade opened the door a crack, keeping the chain latch on. "Can I help you, officer?" Officer Harlan pushed against the door, testing the chain. "Open the door fully, sir. We need to have a chat." "About what?" Kade asked, his voice a low rumble. He kept his hands visible, resting on the door frame. He knew the drill. He knew the stats. We have had reports of drug trafficking in this motel involving a truck like yours, Harlan said, his hand resting instinctively on his holster. I need to check your ID and search the vehicle. Kade sighed. Officer, I just got here. I am here for a funeral. My truck is clean. I am not consenting to a search. Harlan's face flushed. He was not used to no in Jericho County. No was usually followed by a night in the drunk tank. I smell marijuana coming from the room, Harlan said, the lie slipping out easier than the truth ever did. That gives me probable cause. Open the damn door or I will kick it in for obstruction. Kade stared at him. He did not smoke. He did not drink. His body was a temple built for war. But he knew that in this moment the truth did not matter to Derek Harlan. I'm going to close the door to take off the chain, Kade said calmly. Do not shoot. He closed it, slid the chain off, and opened the door wide. Harlan stormed in, the rain blowing in behind him. He did not look for drugs. He got right in Kade's face, trying to assert dominance over a man who had stared down warlords in the Hindu Kush. Turn around, Harlan barked. Hands behind your back. Am I under arrest? Kade asked, not moving. You are now, Harlan sneered, grabbing Kade's wrist. Resisting an officer, disorderly conduct, and whatever else I find in this dump. Kade had not flinched. He calculated the ways he could disarm Harlan, break his arm, and subdue him before the officer's radio hit the floor. But he also knew the headlines: crazed veteran attacks hero cop. He could not do that to Corey's memory. He could not do that to the teams. So Kade Voss, Master Chief Special Warfare Operator, retired, turned around. You are making a mistake, Kade said softly, as the cold steel of the handcuffs bit into his wrists. The only mistake, Harlan grunted, tightening them painfully, was you coming into my town. The rain had intensified, turning the parking lot into a shallow lake. Harlan marched Kade out of the room, shoving him toward the cruiser. A few other motel guests had stepped out onto the balcony. A trucker in a wife-beater, a young couple clutching each other. They watched in silence, phones raised, recording. Harlan loved an audience. He puffed his chest out. See, folks? See? Just keeping the streets safe. Another dealer off the board. Kade was shoved into the back of the cruiser. The hard plastic seat was uncomfortable, cramping his large frame. He watched through the plexiglass as Harlan went back into room 104. The officer tossed the room. Kade watched the lights flicker as Harlan rifled through his bag. Harlan came back, holding Kade's wallet and the Sig Sauer in an evidence bag. He looked triumphant. Gotcha, Harlan said, sliding into the front seat. Unregistered firearm. That is a felony. It is registered, Kade said from the back, his voice eerily calm. Check the wallet behind the driver's license. Harlan scoffed. He flipped the wallet open, glancing at the ID, Kade Voss, Virginia Beach. He ignored the flap behind the license. He did not care. He threw the wallet on the dashboard. You are done, Voss. I'm taking you in. You will be lucky if you see a judge anytime soon. Harlan started the car. Officer, Kade said, I have a right to a phone call. I am entitled to one phone call. You get a call when we get to the station, Harlan laughed. No, Kade said. The tone of his voice changed. It was not the voice of a suspect anymore. It was the voice of command. It cut through the hum of the engine and the noise of the rain. You are detaining a Tier 1 asset on a federal timeline. If I do not check in soon, a protocol you do not understand will be initiated. Give me my phone. Harlan slammed on the brakes before they even left the lot. He turned around, red-faced. Who do you think you are? John Rambo? You are a nobody with a gun in a cheap motel. My name is Master Chief Kade Voss, he said, enunciating every syllable. And I am asking you, for the safety of your career in this precinct, to let me make a call. Harlan stared at him. There was something in Kade's eyes, a cold, shark-like deadness that made the hair on Harlan's arms stand up. Doubt crept in for a fraction of a second, but Harlan's ego crushed it. "Shut up," Harlan muttered, but he did not drive away. He picked up the radio. "Dispatch, Unit 4 Alpha, bringing one in. He is talking crazy, claims to be military." "Unit 4 Alpha, copy. Do you want me to run his service record?" "Yeah, run it." Kade Voss. Harlan waited, smirking at Kade in the rearview mirror. "We will see who you are in a second." Silence stretched, then the radio crackled, but the voice was not the board dispatcher. It was the sheriff, Raymond Holt, and he sounded breathless. "Unit 4 Alpha, this is Sheriff Holt. What is your location?" "I'm at the Starlight, Sheriff, just wrapped up." "Derek, listen to me very carefully." The sheriff's voice was tight, trembling. "Did you arrest a Kade Voss?" "Yes, sir. Caught him with a weapon and—" The sheriff screamed over the radio. "Do not move. Do not transport him. Unhandcuff him immediately." Harlan blinked, confused. "Sheriff, he has a gun. He is agitated. I think he is high." "Derek, I just got a call from the Pentagon. That man is not a suspect. He is—" The sheriff's voice cracked. "Just let him go. I'm on my way." Harlan looked back at Kade. Kade had not moved. He was just watching Harlan with that same terrifying patience. "Pentagon," Harlan whispered to himself. He looked at the wallet on the dashboard. He reached out, his hand shaking slightly, and flipped the leather flap behind the license. A badge gleamed back at him. It was not a police badge. It was a heavy gold trident set against a dark blue background. Below it was a card that read, "Department of the Navy, Special Warfare Development Group, Security Clearance, Yankee White." Harlan felt his stomach drop through the floorboard. "I told you," Kade said. "Now hand me my phone. I need to make a call." Harlan, pale as a sheet, reached back through the partition gap and handed the phone to Kade, his fingers trembling. Kade took it. He did not call a lawyer. He did not call the sheriff. He dialed a number from memory. It rang once. "Voss." A voice answered instantly, sharp, alert. "It is me," Kade said. "I have been detained by local law enforcement in Jericho County. Hostile interaction. I am going to miss the check-in window." There was a pause on the other end, then the voice. Commander Brock Vale, the CO of his old unit, spoke. "Are you safe for now?" "The officer is unstable." "Understood," Vale said. "You said call the team before you left if things went south. Is this that call?" Kade looked at Harlan, whose eyes were wide with panic in the front seat. "Yes," Kade said. "Call the team." Officer Derek Harlan sat in the driver's seat of his cruiser, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard, his knuckles turned the color of old bone. The rain was no longer a drizzle. It was a deluge, hammering against the roof like thousands of tiny fists, demanding entry. Inside the car, the air was thick with the smell of wet wool and fear. Behind the plexiglass partition, Kade Voss sat in silence. He had not spoken since he made the call. He did not need to. He simply leaned his head back against the seat, closed his eyes, and waited. His breathing was slow, rhythmic, a sharp contrast to Harlan's jagged, shallow gasps. "You think you are scaring me?" Harlan muttered, though his voice lacked any real bite. It was a reflex, a desperate attempt to reclaim the power he felt slipping through his fingers like sand. "You make a call to somebody in the service, think that gets you out of a felony?" This is Jericho County, pal. My county. Kade opened one eye. It was a cold, dark abyss. It is not your county anymore, officer. It is a landing zone. Before Harlan could retort, blue and red lights exploded in the rearview mirror. Sheriff Raymond Holt's SUV screeched into the lot, fishtailing on the wet gravel before slamming to a halt just inches from Harlan's bumper. The sheriff burst out of his vehicle, ignoring the rain soaking his uniform. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s, usually composed, but tonight his face was pale, his eyes wide with a terror Harlan had never seen before. Holt did not walk. He ran, slipping in the mud, banging his fist on Harlan's window. "Unlock it, Derek. Unlock the damn door." Harlan fumbled with the switch, the locks clicking open. Holt wrenched the door open, grabbing Harlan by the collar of his uniform. "What did you do?" Holt hissed, spit flying. "I told you to stand down. Did you process him? Did you put him in the system?" I was just taking him in," Harlan stammered, shrinking back. "Sheriff, he has an unregistered weapon. He is resisting. He has some fake badge in his wallet." "Fake?" Holt laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. He let go of Harlan and looked at the back seat. He saw Kade Voss. He saw the handcuffs. Holt looked like he was about to vomit. "That is not a fake badge, you idiot," Holt whispered. "I just got off the phone with the Department of Defense. Do you know who that man is? That is Master Chief Kade Voss. He was part of the unit that took down the Jamal insurgent cell. He has a presidential unit citation. He is untouchable, Derek, and you have him in cuffs like a common thief." Harlan looked back at Kade. The big man was watching them, his expression unreadable. "So what?" Harlan said, trying to find his bravado. "He broke the law in my town. Nobody is above the law." "You do not get it," Holt said, wiping rain from his face. "They are not sending a lawyer, Derek. They told me to clear the airspace. Do you know what that means?" Harlan frowned. "Airspace?" Then they heard it. It started as a low thrum, a vibration that rattled the loose change in the cruiser's cup holder. It grew louder, a thop that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The rain patterns on the windshield began to dance, erratic and violent. Harlan looked up through the windshield. The night sky, previously a void of black clouds, was suddenly pierced by blinding white spotlights. 1, 2, 4. A massive downdraft hit the parking lot, flattening the grass and sending trash cans skittering across the pavement. The roar was deafening now, the scream of turbine engines drowning out the storm. "My God," Holt whispered. 2 MH-60 M Black Hawk helicopters, painted matte black, with no reflective markings, hovered just 50 feet above the motel. The sheer power of the machines shook the ground. Ropes dropped from the side doors, uncoiling like snakes. "What is this?" Harlan screamed, covering his ears. "Call state troopers, call backup." "Shut up," Holt yelled back. "Do not dare touch that radio." Fast roping down with terrifying speed were figures clad in full tactical gear, multicam uniforms, quad-lens night vision goggles flipped up on their helmets, suppressed HK-4-16 rifles strapped to their chests. They did not move like police. They moved like water, fluid, unstoppable, and synchronized. Within seconds, 12 operators hit the ground. They fanned out in a perfect perimeter. Weapons raised, but not pointed, yet. They secured the corners of the parking lot, isolating the 2 police vehicles. Harlan reached for his sidearm, a reflex of pure panic. Crack. A laser sight, green and unblinking, appeared directly on Harlan's chest, then another on his forehead, then a third on his hand. "Hands!" A voice boomed over a loudspeaker from the lead helicopter. "Driver of the police cruiser, remove your hand from the weapon. Step out of the vehicle now." Harlan froze. He looked at the laser dots dancing on his uniform. He looked at the operators on the ground, faceless behind their gear, looking like reapers sent to collect a soul. "Do it, Derek!" Holt screamed. "Do not die for your ego." Harlan slowly, agonizingly lifted his hands. He opened the door with his elbow and stepped out into the rain. The wind from the rotors nearly knocked him over. A man walked through the perimeter of operators. He was not wearing a helmet. He wore a simple tactical cap and a headset. He had a beard that was gray at the tips and a scar running down his left cheek. This was Lieutenant Commander Brock Vale. He walked right past Harlan as if he did not exist. He walked past the sheriff. He went straight to the rear passenger door of the cruiser. He opened it. "Master Chief," Vale said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. "Apologies for the delay. Weather was a bit soupy over the ridge." Kade turned his body so his cuffed hands were visible. "Good to see you, Brock. You made good time." Vale's eyes dropped to the handcuffs. The playful look vanished from his face, replaced by a cold, hard rage that lowered the temperature of the parking lot by 10 degrees. He reached into his vest, pulled out a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters. He did not even bother asking for the key and snapped the chain of the cuffs with a single powerful crunch. Kade rubbed his wrists. He stepped out of the car, towering over everyone. Vale turned slowly to look at Officer Harlan. "Who put the bracelets on him?" Vale asked. He did not shout. He did not need to. Sheriff Holt pointed a trembling finger at Harlan. "He did, Officer Harlan. I tried to stop him." Vale walked over to Harlan. He stood inches away from the officer's face. Harlan was shaking uncontrollably now, the reality of his situation crashing down on him. "You arrested Kade Voss," Vale said, his voice flat. "Do you know who you are looking at? You are looking at the man who carried 3 of my guys out of a burning building in Fallujah while taking fire. You are looking at a man who has saved more American lives in a week than you will meet in your entire lifetime." I suspected drugs," Harlan squeaked. "Probable cause." "Drugs?" Vale laughed, a harsh bark. "We just ran a spectral analysis on your cruiser and the suspect vehicle from the air. The only narcotics trace in this immediate vicinity is coming from your trunk. Officer, want to explain that?" Harlan's knees buckled. The parking lot of the Starlight Motel had transformed into a forward operating base. The Black Hawks had set down in the adjacent field, their rotors slowly spinning down. The motel guests were watching from their windows, phones recording everything. This was going viral before the morning sun would even rise. Kade Voss stood by the hood of his truck, holding a bottle of water one of the operators had given him. He watched as Officer Harlan was systematically dismantled, not physically, but existentially. Sheriff Holt was on the phone, likely with the governor, judging by the amount of "yes, sir," and "I understand, sir," coming from his mouth. But the real nightmare for Harlan was just arriving. A black government SUV with diplomatic plates tore into the lot, bypassing the police barricade that had been hastily set up by confused local deputies. Out stepped a woman in a sharp trench coat holding a briefcase. She had short, severe hair and glasses that seemed to magnify the intensity of her glare. This was Captain Nadia Reyes, JAG, Judge Advocate General. She was the legal shark the Navy sent when they wanted to leave no survivors. She walked straight to Kade. "Master Chief, are you injured?" "Bruised wrists, bruised ego," Kade replied with a faint smile. "I am fine, Captain." "Good," Reyes said, turning on her heel to face Harlan and Holt. She opened her briefcase on the hood of the sheriff's car, oblivious to the rain. "Officer Derek Harlan," she began, reading from a document. "Badge number 4922. 3 prior complaints of excessive force, all dismissed by Internal Affairs. 2 complaints of racial profiling, settled out of court with taxpayer money." Harlan, who was now leaning against his cruiser for support, looked up. How do you have that?" "I have everything," Reyes said without looking up. "We are the United States government, Officer Harlan. When you detained a Tier 1 asset without cause, you authorized us to look into your life with a microscope, and frankly, it is disgusting." She pulled out a plastic bag containing a small sealed packet. "My team swept your cruiser," Reyes said. "We found this under the spare tire in your trunk. 2 ounces of confiscated methamphetamine that was never logged into evidence. You were planning to plant this, were you not? Or maybe sell it?" Harlan's face went gray. That is not mine. I found it earlier. I was going to log it. The timestamps on your dashcam, which we have already remotely downloaded, show you confiscated this previously," Reyes said. "Possession of a controlled substance, intent to distribute, official misconduct, kidnapping, assault on a federal asset." She looked at the sheriff. "Sheriff Holt, I suggest you arrest your deputy immediately. If you do not, I will have the MPS do it, and they are far less gentle." Sheriff Holt did not hesitate. He pulled his own handcuffs from his belt, the same cuffs Harlan had used on so many innocent people, and walked over to his deputy. "Turn around, Derek," Holt said, his voice heavy with disappointment and fear. "Raymond, come on," Harlan pleaded, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "It is me. We play poker on Fridays. Do not do this." "You did this," Holt said, snapping the cuffs on. "You targeted the wrong man. You brought the wrath of God down on my department." As Harlan was shoved into the back of the sheriff's SUV, Kade walked over. The operators parted ways to let him through. Kade leaned down to the window, looking at Harlan through the glass. Harlan looked back, broken. The arrogance was gone. The bully was gone. All that was left was a scared little man who had realized too late that the badge did not make him a king. "See?" Kade said softly, his voice muffled by the glass. "I was here for a funeral. I just wanted to pay my respects." Kade stood up and tapped the roof of the car. "Take him away." But the night was not over. As the sheriff's car pulled away, another vehicle arrived. It was a news van from the state capital. Then another. The story was out. Navy SEAL hero arrested by corrupt cop. The headlines were already being written. Captain Nadia Reyes walked up to Kade. "Master Chief, we have a situation. The local DA is trying to save face. He is claiming you resisted arrest and that the search was legal. He wants to drag this out." Kade sighed. "I do not have time for court, Captain. I have to bury Corey tomorrow." "You will not have to go to court," Brockvale interrupted, walking up with a satellite phone in his hand. "We just got a call from the governor, and he has the president on the other line. Seems the commander-in-chief is not too happy about one of his SEALs being harassed on U.S. soil." Vale handed the phone to Kade. He listened for a moment, then he nodded. "Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I will be there." He handed the phone back to Vale. "What did he say?" Reyes asked. "He said the charges are dropped with prejudice," Kade said. "And he said he is sending an FBI task force to audit the entire Jericho County Police Department starting tomorrow morning." Kade looked at the flashing lights of the police cruisers, the embarrassed deputies standing in the rain. and the Black Hawks spooling up their engines. "Justice is coming," Kade said. "But first, I have a funeral to attend." "We are coming with you," Vale said. "Corey was one of us. We do not let a brother walk alone." "But the funeral?" Kade hesitated. "It is a poor family. They cannot afford much." "They were going to pay for it," Vale smiled. "Chief, look behind the second chopper." Kade looked. Emerging from the darkness of the field were 4 more men. They were carrying a casket. It was not a cheap wooden box. It was polished mahogany with silver handles draped in a pristine American flag. "We brought him home," Vale said. "And we brought the checkbook. The teams take care of their own." Kade felt a lump in his throat. He had faced torture, war, and death without blinking. But seeing his brother standing there, ready to honor the fallen kid he had tried to save, that broke him. He nodded, unable to speak. "Let us move out," Vale ordered. "Convoy formation. We are escorting the chief to the church." As the convoy of military SUVs and Black Hawks prepared to leave, the remaining Jericho County police officers stood in the rain, watching in awe and shame. They had thought they were the power in this town. They had thought they could push people around because they had a badge. They had learned a hard lesson that night. There are wolves, there are sheepdogs, and then there are the dragons. And you never, ever wake the dragon. The storm had passed, leaving the morning sky a bruised purple that slowly bled into a pale, clean blue. The convoy left the Starlight Motel early. It was a sight the residents of Jericho County had never seen and would never forget. Leading the pack was Kade's rusted Ford F-15O, now flanked by 2 matte black SUVs with government plates. Behind them, the massive transport truck carrying the remains of Petty Officer Corey Hayes rumbled solemnly. Overhead, one of the Black Hawks flew a low, slow circle, a guardian angel watching over the procession. They drove away from the highway, deeper into the hollows, the part of town the police usually ignored unless they were looking to meet a quota. The houses here were small, sided with peeling clapboard, sitting on overgrown lots. When the convoy pulled up to the Mount Zion Baptist Church, the engine noise drew people out of their homes. It was not fear this time. It was awe. The church was a modest structure, its white paint graying with age, the steeple slightly listing to the left. But the grounds were swept clean. Standing on the front steps was Lena Hayes, Corey's mother. She wore a black dress that had seen too many funerals, her hands clutching a damp handkerchief. Kade stepped out of his truck. He had changed. Gone was the gray hoodie. He now wore his dress blues, the fabric crisp, his chest heavy with ribbons, the silver star, the bronze star with V device, the purple heart. The gold trident shone like a beacon above his left pocket. He walked up the path, the gravel crunching under his polished shoes. Commander Vale and 6 other operators, also in dress blues, fell in behind him. They moved with a synchronized grace that made the local deputies watching from a distance look like children playing dress-up. Kade stopped in front of Lena. He towered over her, but he bowed his head low. "Mrs. Hayes," Kade said, his voice thick with emotion, "I am Master Chief Kade Voss. I was Corey's team leader." Lena looked up at him, her eyes swimming with tears. "He spoke of you. He called you Big Brother. He said you saved him more times than he could count." "He saved me, ma'am," Kade corrected gently. "He was the best of us." Kade signaled to the team. The operators moved to the transport truck. With practiced reverence, They lifted the mahogany casket draped in the American flag. The silence in the churchyard was absolute. Even the birds seemed to pause. They carried Corey inside. The service was not the quick, lonely affair Lena had feared she would have to arrange with her meager savings. It was a warrior's send-off. The church filled to capacity, not just with family, but with the SEALs, the JAG officers, and the FBI agents who had arrived that morning. The back pews were filled with locals who had heard the rumors. The Navy is here. They arrested Harlan. They are cleaning house. During the eulogy, Kade took the pulpit. He gripped the wood, his knuckles white. Corey Hayes did not die of an overdose, Kade announced. The murmurs in the crowd ceased instantly. The coroner's report, which we had an independent federal examiner review this morning, confirms it. There were no recreational drugs in his system. There was a lethal dose of fentanyl administered forcibly. He did not slip. He was murdered. A gasp tore through the room. Lena let out a sob. He was murdered, Kade continued, his eyes scanning the room, landing on the few local deputies standing nervously by the door. Because he came back home and saw something he was not supposed to see. He saw a pipeline of poison running through this county, protected by a badge. Kade looked directly at Lena. We did not just come to bury him, Mrs. Hayes. We came to finish his mission. As the service ended, the team carried the casket to the gravesite. The air was still. "Present arms!" Vale barked. 7 rifles snapped up. Crack, crack, crack. The 3-volley salute echoed off the distant hills. Then the bugle player, a young sailor brought in from the base, played taps. The haunting notes drifted over the wet grass, heavy with sorrow. Kade accepted the folded flag from the chaplain. He knelt on one knee in the mud, ruining his dress trousers, and held the triangle of blue and stars out to Lena. On behalf of the President of the United States, the United States Navy, and a grateful nation, Kade recited, his voice cracking on the last word. Please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your son's honorable and faithful service. Lena took the flag, pressing it to her chest. Kade then did something not in the manual. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his own trident pin, the one he had worn on his first deployment. He pressed it into her hand. He earned this, Kade whispered. As the team walked back to the vehicles, Captain Nadia Reyes approached Kade. Her face was grim. You were right about the toxicology, she said quietly. And we found the link. The fentanyl that killed Corey has the same chemical signature as the batch we found in Officer Harlan's trunk. Kade stopped. He looked back at the fresh grave. Harlan did not just profile me, Kade said, the realization turning his blood to ice. He recognized my truck. He knew Corey drove a Ford like that. He thought I was Corey coming back, or a friend coming to ask questions. He was trying to clean up a loose end. Reyes nodded. Instead, he tugged on a thread that is going to unravel the whole state. Kade opened his truck door. Get the indictment ready, Captain. I want to look him in the eye when you read it. The federal courthouse in the state capital was a fortress of glass and steel, a stark contrast to the rotting wood of the Starlight Motel. The air conditioning hummed, filtering out the heat of summer. But inside, courtroom 4B, the atmosphere was suffocating. The United States versus Derek Harlan. The charges had mutated. It was no longer just unlawful arrest or possession. The indictment list was terrifying. Deprivation of rights under color of law, resulting in death. Conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. Obstruction of justice. First-degree murder. Derek Harlan sat at the defendant's table. He looked smaller than he had that night in the rain. His uniform was replaced by a cheap suit that did not fit. His buzz cut had grown out into patchy, thinning hair. He would not look at the gallery. He could not. The gallery was full. On the left side, the blue wall, supporters, police union reps, and family members holding signs that said, "Support our police." But the wall was thin. The FBI audit had been thorough. Half of the Jericho County Sheriff's Department was already under indictment or had resigned in disgrace. Sheriff Holt was noticeably absent. He had cut a plea deal and was currently singing to a grand jury in another room. On the right side of the gallery sat the green wall. Kade Voss sat in the front row. Next to him was Commander Vale. Behind them were 20 members of the SEAL teams, all in civilian clothes. But their presence was louder than any shout. Lena sat between Kade and Vale. The prosecutor was, of course, Captain Nadia Reyes. She had requested special permission to second chair the federal prosecutor, Robert Vance, a man known in legal circles as the butcher for his conviction rate. Harlan's defense attorney, a sweaty man named Lionel Greer, stood up to cross-examine Kade, who was currently on the witness stand. "Mr. Voss," Greer said, trying to sound authoritative, "you admit that on the night in question, you were carrying a firearm." "A legally registered firearm," Kade said calmly. "But you failed to inform the officer immediately," Greer pressed. "Do you not think Officer Harlan was justified in fearing for his life? A large man late at night in a high-crime area." Kade leaned into the microphone. "I am a Tier 1 operator, Mr. Greer. If I wanted to harm Officer Harlan, he would not have had time to fear for his life. He would simply have ceased to exist." The jury, a diverse group selected from 3 counties over, shifted in their seats. "Objection," Greer stuttered. "The witness is posturing." "Overruled," Judge Harlan Pierce said, looking over his spectacles. "You asked the question, counselor." Greer wiped his forehead. "The defense contends that Officer Harlan made a mistake, a procedural error, not a hate crime, and certainly not a murder conspiracy. He arrested you because of the truck description." "Yes," Kade said. "He did arrest me because of the truck, because he thought I was Corey Hayes." "Objection, speculation. I have the evidence." Captain Reyes stood up, holding a folder. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to introduce Exhibit 44B into evidence." Judge Pierce nodded. "Proceed." Reyes walked to the center of the room. She placed a grainy photo on the projector. It was a text message thread recovered from Derek Harlan's personal cell phone, the one he had tried to smash when the SEALs landed, but which the FBI forensics team had pieced back together. The text was sent shortly before Harlan knocked on Kade's door. It was sent to a number saved as Sheriff Wade. The text read, "The Ford is back at the Starlight. I think Hayes' buddy is here, or maybe Hayes faked it. Going to take him off the board tonight. No witnesses." The courtroom erupted. Greer froze. Harlan put his head in his hands. "Order!" Judge Pierce banged his gavel. "Order, or I will clear this court." Reyes turned to Harlan. "You did not think you were arresting a drug dealer, Mr. Harlan. You thought you were finishing a hit. You thought Corey Hayes, the man you poisoned previously because he would not take your bribe to run drugs in his truck, had survived, or that he had sent help." Reyes walked over to the jury box. Officer Harlan saw a black man in a truck and saw 2 things: a threat to his criminal enterprise and a person nobody would miss. He was wrong on both counts. She turned back to Kade. "Master Chief, what happened when you told him to call your team?" Kade looked straight at Harlan. He laughed. "He told me I was a nobody." Kade paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. He forgot that in this country, nobody is a nobody. Every citizen has rights, and some citizens have backup. The trial continued, but it was over in that moment. The defense crumbled. Sheriff Holt's testimony the following week was the final nail in the coffin. Holt admitted that Harlan was the enforcer for a ring that moved narcotics through the motel using confiscated trucks to transport the goods. Corey Hayes had refused to be a mule. So Harlan silenced him. When the jury returned, they did not even look at Harlan. "We find the defendant, Derek Harlan, guilty on all counts," the foreman read. Harlan did not cry this time. He just stared blankly at the wall, the weight of his karma finally crushing the air out of his lungs. He was not going to a county jail where his buddies could protect him. He was going to federal supermax. As the bailiffs shackled Harlan, real shackles this time, heavy chains around his waist and ankles, Kade stood up. He did not gloat, he did not cheer. He simply nodded at Harlan. Harlan looked up, his eyes meeting Kade's for the last time. In Kade's eyes, he saw no hate, only pity. Pity for a man who had everything, authority, a career, a life, and threw it away because he was too small to be a good man. Kade turned to Lena. She was weeping silently, holding the trident pin. "Is it over?" she asked. Kade put his arm around her. "The war is over, Lena. Now we rebuild." Outside the courthouse, the press was waiting, a sea of microphones and cameras. They wanted a soundbite. They wanted the hero shot. Kade walked past them. He walked straight to his truck. The same rusted Ford F-150. He had work to do. The foundation was not going to build itself. The wheels of justice grind slow. But when they are greased by the United States Navy and a federal civil rights lawsuit, they grind exceedingly fine. The criminal trial was only the first hammer blow. The second was the civil suit, Voss versus Jericho County. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. With the corruption exposed, the county did not even try to fight. The settlement was historic. $45 million in damages for wrongful arrest, civil rights violations, and emotional distress, plus an additional undisclosed sum from the police union's insurance carrier. The entire Jericho County Police Department was dissolved by the state legislature, replaced by a new oversight committee and a contract with the state troopers until a vetted force could be built from scratch. But for Derek Harlan, money was an abstract concept. Now, his reality was concrete, specifically the 6-by-8-foot slab of concrete that was his new world at the ADX Florence Supermax facility. They did not put him in general population. Even the federal government knew that a dirty cop in a yard full of lifers would last about 30 seconds. So they gave him administrative segregation. It sounded bureaucratic and safe. In reality, it was a tomb. Harlan sat on the edge of his steel bunk. It had been a long time since he was processed. A long time of 23 hours inside, 1 hour in a solitary cage outside. No contact with other inmates. No phone calls to other buddies on the force who had all blocked his number long ago anyway. He looked at the wall. He had scratched a calendar into the paint with his fingernail. Why did I stop him? The question played on a loop in his mind. A torture worse than any physical beating. He replayed that night at the Starlight Motel 1,000 times a day. He remembered the rain. He remembered the truck. He remembered the feeling of power he had when he saw the black man opening the door. It was a drug, that feeling. The rush of knowing he could ruin a day or a life just because he wore a badge. He had thought he was the predator. He had thought he was the shark in the tank. He did not know he was swimming with a leviathan. "Chow," a guard barked, sliding a tray through the slot in the heavy steel door. Harlan shuffled over. The guard did not look at him. To the guards here, Harlan was lower than the gang leaders and the terrorists. He was a traitor to the uniform, a cop who used his power to murder and frame. There is no brotherhood for those who stain the shield. Harlan took the tray. It was lukewarm meatloaf. He sat back down. He reached under his mattress and pulled out a crinkled piece of paper. It was a photocopy of a newspaper article his public defender had sent him, maybe out of pity, maybe out of spite. The headline read, "SEAL veteran Kade Voss breaks ground on $20 million community center in Jericho." There was a picture. Kade was smiling, holding a golden shovel. Standing next to him was Lena Hayes, looking radiant in a Sunday hat. In the background, the skeleton of a massive building was rising from the very lot where the Starlight Motel once stood. Harlan stared at the photo. He had tried to bury that man. He had tried to bury the truth about Corey Hayes. And in doing so, he had elevated Kade Voss to a folk hero and destroyed his own life. He looked at Kade's eyes in the photo. Even in newsprint, they held that same calm, terrifying intensity. "Call my SEAL team." Harlan whispered the words to the empty cell. He realized now that Kade was not threatening him with violence that night. He was offering him a chance to walk away, a chance to not be the villain in a story that would end with Harlan rotting in a concrete box. Harlan wept, not for the first time, and certainly not for the last. The karma had not just hit him, it had swallowed him whole. He would spend the next 40 years in this box, remembering every second of the night. He made the worst mistake of his life. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, the world was moving on, and it was becoming a better place, specifically because Derek Harlan was no longer in it. Jericho County did not look like the same place. The roads were paved. The peeling clapboard houses in the hollows had been renovated or replaced with affordable, sturdy housing. The fear that used to hang over the town like a low fog, the fear of flashing blue lights in the rearview mirror, was gone. The new sheriff, a former Marine named Jenkins, walked the beat. She did not hide in speed traps. She knew the kids by name. She knew the shop owners. She had been handpicked by the Citizens Oversight Committee, a board chaired by none other than Kade Voss. But the heart of the new Jericho was the building that stood at the entrance of the town. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture, glass and timber rising out of the earth. Above the grand entrance, etched in steel, were the words, "The Corey Hayes Veteran and Community Center." It was opening day. The parking lot was full, not with police cruisers and news vans this time, but with families. Kids were running on the new soccer fields. Veterans from 3 different wars sat on the benches by the reflection pool, swapping stories. In the center of the atrium, a massive crowd had gathered. Kade Voss stood at the podium. He was older now, the gray in his beard more pronounced, but he looked lighter. The burden of anger he had carried for so long had been transmuted into these bricks, mortar, and hope. He wore a simple suit today, no medals, no uniform. Today, he was just a citizen. "Years ago," Kade began, his voice amplifying through the hall, "I came to this town to bury a brother." The crowd went silent. Lena, sitting in the front row, nodded. She was the director of outreach for the center now. She had turned her grief into a crusade to save at-risk youth. I came here expecting to find darkness, Kade continued. And I did. I found a darkness that hides behind authority. A darkness that judges a man by his paint job or his zip code. I was arrested a few hundred yards from where I am standing. I was cuffed. I was told I was nobody. Kade looked out at the crowd. He saw faces of all colors. He saw the new deputies standing respectfully at the back. But darkness cannot drive out darkness, Kade said, quoting Dr. King. Only light can do that. And that night, when I made a call, I did not call for a rescue. I called for the light. A low rumble started overhead. Every head in the atrium turned upward toward the glass skylight. Hovering perfectly still above the building was a single MH-60M Black Hawk. It was not threatening this time. It was a salute. The side door of the atrium opened, and they walked in. The team, Commander Brock Vale, now a civilian with a limp but the same steely eyes, Sniper Ghost Rodriguez, Medic Doc Ali, the men who had fast-roped into the rain that night. They were not wearing tactical gear. They were wearing suits. They walked through the crowd shaking hands, high-fiving kids. Vale walked up to the podium and shook Kade's hand. "You built a hell of a thing, Chief," Vale said, leaning into the mic. "Corey would have loved it." "He does love it," Kade said, looking at the large portrait of Corey Hayes hanging above the reception desk. "He is watching." Kade turned back to the crowd. "This center is for everyone," he said. "It has a legal clinic to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. It has a gym to build strong bodies. It has a library to build strong minds. But most importantly, it has a code." Kade pointed to the plaque on the wall. The code: 1. Protect the weak. 2. Stand for truth. 3. Never leave a brother behind. "We reclaimed this ground," Kade said, his voice rising. "We took a place of trauma and turned it into a fortress of peace. Let this be a warning to anyone who thinks they can abuse their power. The eyes of the world are watching, and if you come for the innocent, if you come for the righteous, you better be ready for the storm." The crowd erupted in applause. Lena stood up and hugged Kade. The team gathered around them. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a long golden glow over Jericho. Far away, in a cold cell, Derek Harlan stared at the wall, a forgotten ghost of a time that was no more. But here, in the warmth of the center, life was beginning. Kade walked out to the reflection pool. He looked at his reflection in the water. He did not see a victim. He did not see a suspect. He saw a man who had kept his promise. He took out his phone. He did not need to make a call, but he looked at the contact list anyway. The team. He smiled, pocketed the phone, and walked back inside to join his family. Wow, what a journey! From a rainy motel parking lot to a multi-million-dollar center for justice. Kade Voss did not just win a lawsuit. He dismantled a corrupt system and built a legacy that will last for generations. And that brings us to the real lesson of this story. True power is not about the badge on your chest or the gun on your hip. It is about who you stand up for when the rain is pouring and nobody is watching. Officer Harlan thought he had power, but all he had was a position. Kade had purpose, and he had a brotherhood that extended far beyond blood. If this story got your heart racing, if it made you angry and then made you cheer for justice, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button right now. It helps us share these stories with more people. And listen, If you want more stories about karma hitting back, about heroes who do not wear capes but do wear dog tags, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We have a massive story coming next week about a corrupt judge who messed with the wrong single mother. You do not want to miss it. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that justice is real. Thanks for watching. And as always, stay safe, stand tall, and watch your six.